We'll move forward with our regular agenda today. So I'll continue on with the procedures. So I would like to remind our attendees that the PRC meeting will be recorded, and that just began. We ask that commissioners, presenters, and attendees please mute your microphones and turn off your video feeds if you are not speaking. For those attending via telephone, you can mute and unmute your microphones by dialing *6. The chat box will be monitored to address any technical or procedural questions during the meeting, but should not be used for meeting discussion. Commissioners should use their raise your hand function on the top toolbar to be recognized during the commission discussion, and assigned presenters may share their screens using the share content box above. As way of information, we'll be holding a public comment period, and in order to be recognized, please use the raise your hand function, and each public commenter will have up to 3 minutes for public comment. Staff will signal to the speaker once time is up. And during the public comment period and during the agenda item discussions among the PRC, the chair will recognize virtual participation first, and then in-person attendees will be able to comment. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to our Vice Chair, Gary Shinders.
Okay, I will add my welcome to Marcos, and I think we'll go ahead and get started with a consideration of the June 25th, 2024 minutes. And I will move that we approve the draft that was circulated. If I could ask for a second.
Oh, wait, can we do that without a quorum?
Oh, we have a quorum now.
We have a quorum.
Yes.
Motion.
All right. All in favor? Thumbs up? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you so much. Okay. Next item of business before we move on to public comment is consideration of the policy governing virtual meetings and remote participation in meetings. That was a draft that was circulated to the commissioners. It's based on the advice of the county's attorneys in terms of what we are now permitted to do, and also what we are required to do with respect to participation in meetings. So I would like also, we have yet one more. Super quorum now. Andrea, we just passed upon the minutes for last month's meeting, and passed unanimously, and now we're considering the policy governing virtual meetings and remote participation in meetings. So circulated to the commissioners some time ago. So I've looked this over. Does anyone have any questions on it before we consider adopting this? Okay, no one online has any questions? Okay, so I'd like to move that the commission adopt the policy circulated to the commissioners as written. So how about a second? Second. Okay, thank you. So can I see by a show of thumbs up or thumbs down how we vote on this? Okay. All right. It's unanimous.
I believe Adam is online. All right.
So thumbs up.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So that moves 9-0.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we've got those two items off the agenda, and that allows us to move right into public comment.
Yes, so we have two public commenters scheduled so far for this evening. Our first is Dr. Bernard Byrne, followed by Stacey Meyer.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's a little faint, Dr.
Yeah.
Byrne.
Okay, well, I'll have to shout. I have my settings on, I think.
We can't really make out your voice.
I have the settings on. Can you hear me?
No, it's still not really able.
Muffled.
Okay.
Very muffled.
I will go out of the meeting and rejoin it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we want to move on to the
Sure.
other individual? making a public comment,
Yes,
and we can come back.
we'll come back to Dr. Byrne.
Yeah.
So we'll recognize Stacy Meyer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, I got a new camera and mic, so glad it's working. Greetings, Parks and Rec Commission. My name is Stacy Meyer. I'm Vice President of the Aurora Highlands Civic Association. We are the home of National Landing, 22202, and Amazon. And I am here tonight to just get on your radar the Melwood Glup special study that is happening at Nellie Custis Park. The neighborhood is very concerned about this study and what the study brought up and what the applicant is filing for their 4.1, and would like to follow up with the Parks and Rec Commission as possible to share our concerns. We've already talked to Ashruti during the LRPC, during the LRPC process. The association has a proposal that allows the developer and the landowner to get at get a development that's reasonable on the site, and achieve many or most of their goals while keeping the park separated from this big building and preserving the historic building that's next door. So there's some materials to share. I can follow up. I'm just, if Shri is the right person to go through, I have her contact information. If it's the chair, let me know.
It'll be Gary and it'll be Jill. And I believe you have their emails, but could we maybe get
I do not.
All right, Marco will be able to send them to you, thankfully.
So you have my email address because of how I signed up tonight?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'd like to share the 4.1 and our comments to it, specific comments. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'd like to follow up and appreciate your attention and looking at this issue.
Thank you for taking the time to put those comments together, and we very much look forward to reading them. And Marco will get our email addresses out to you as soon as possible.
Marco is the liaison. It's Marco Rivero.
Rivera, that's correct. And I will email you the contact information for both our chair and vice chair.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Have a
Welcome.
good evening, y'all.
You as well.
too.
Thank you. We'll recognize again Dr. Byrne. Dr. Byrne, are you in the call? Not. So we can try again.
Yeah, we can try again if it appears that he's connected.
Are there any others online who would like to make a public comment that we have not, who we have not recognized? Okay, hearing none.
Okay, very good. Well, that allows us, I believe, to move on to the next item on the agenda, the Harris Teeter Site Plan Public Space Naming. It's an information item. And I think we have some presenters.
Hi, yes. And I think we submitted a presentation, so not sure if you guys want us to put that up or.
If you can, that'd be great. If not, I do have the presentation with me.
Okay. I might let you do it since I don't have the ability to share. It's grayed out on my screen.
It's okay. I have it right here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we appreciate you guys having us this evening to talk about the park naming. My name is Marison. I'm with Southeastern Development, working on this 624 North Glebe Park, also known as the Harris Teeter Development. We recently completed phase 1 of this project, and we're about to start the demolition for phase 2, hopefully any day now, which will include this 0.625 acre park. And if you go to the next slide, thank you. You can see this is located between North Thomas Street and North Tazewell Street, internal to our site. And So this park was designed with robust community engagement during our 4.1 process back in 2019. And so now we're just focusing on the naming of the park. And so we've got 3 different names for you all to consider. And as we go through this process, and we've used the county park naming policy to develop these names, which I will let Suhong go through for you guys. And Suhong's with Parker Rodriguez, which is our landscape architect firm. The reason why I'm letting him go over it is because it has a lot to do with the design and the ecological aspects of the park as well as the location. So, Suhong, you can take it away.
Oh, yes. Hi, this is Suhang Liu with Parker Rodriguez. We are the landscape architect from the design team. Can we go back to one slide?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, just want to talk about the location first. So this block is located at 600 series Glebe Road. So on the east side is Glebe Road, and the south side is what was that? I can't see it. Henderson Road, and the west side is Thomas Street, and the north side is Carling Spring Road. And inside the block, on the east side of the park, you can see the park is the red line inside the block. So on the east side of the park, it is the Teswell Street, and on the west side is Thomas Street. And we can see on the right hand side the slide, and I can just quickly go over the design of the park. So on the top is the Teswell Street, which is the entrance of the park. Yeah. So we did 3 different zones. We can see on the next slide, but we can keep on this slide. So the top area, the arrival plaza is the design ideas, and we have a lot of paving. Relatively actually a small plaza, urban plaza area, and then we do with street trees and other canopy trees and also ornamental trees. And then down a little bit, you can see in the center open space. Yes, that was the event lawn or open lawn area. So it's more for dynamic gathering and socializing, and on the left-hand side of the entrance, that's the main primary path go through the entire park from Teswell Street to Thomas Street. And along that path, we created different small sitting loop. And also on the entrance of the right-hand side, we have a secondary path. We can see those trees, those are pine trees, represent ornamental trees. But inside, between those 2 rows of ornamental trees, we have the secondary path, which is to define the central open space and also provide access to the dog park. The dog park is slightly below in the middle, and on the right-hand side, the small triangular area is a little bit up there. Yes, that is the dog run, I should say, not the dog park. It's smaller than a dog park. And so right after the urban the entry plaza, arrival plaza, all the planting we design is more like pollinator meadows, all the plant species and material, and will promote the pollinators. And then past the main area of the park, we can see there are 2 or 3 big existing trees. The one in the middle, down below the middle, there's a really big willow oak. And also next to it on the right hand side, also another big willow oak. So these 2 trees provide some shade area, so we call it like a woodland area, that area. We also use the plant materials also to promote the pollinators. And can we go to the next slide? So the next slide, the top one I just talked about is the urban zone. with the arrival plaza and also street trees and canopy trees and also the big open lawn area. And the next one is the pollinator meadow zone. So we have all the ornamental trees and all the ground covers, shrubs, and all those plant species for pollinators. And then the third one is related to the two existing willow oaks, which we call it like a woodland zone. So this is the design. The main design idea is like to is for is original design idea is like is for pollinators, and also we were thinking about a butterfly garden and something like that. Can we go to the next one? So on the upper left-hand corner, we come up with three proposed names. Is based on three criteria. The first one is ecological, and the next one is historical, and the last one is geographical. And the first name is Tazewell Pollinator Park. Tazewell is the east side of the park, which is the main entrance of the park. So we use Tazewell, and pollinator is like pollinator meadows. It is always the main design idea of the park. So we combine these two together. So come up with the first one. It's called Tazewell Pollinator Park. And the second one, it is the Thomas Meadow Park. Thomas Street, Thomas Road is the other side of the park. So we also use this one and use the street name as the park's name, and also meadow. Meadow is like very similar to the pollinator. And so this is the second one, and the third one is we call it the Buckingham Garden Park. The Buckingham Village Historic District is like a park. Actually, the next block down south of our project site, and it was built constructed from 1937 to 1953, and the design principle of that area is to use like a garden city idea. So we use this name is like Buckingham Garden Park as the third one. I think, and this the last slide is the process, the review process. So we are in the first one, PRC meeting. I think that's it.
Hello, I'm here now. Can I speak? Do you hear me? Bernie
Dr.
Byrne?
Byrne, I was actually about to recognize you as a public commenter, so please.
Yes. Okay, as long as you can hear me. I'm
Yes.
speaking on the park or the PRC development site, which you are discussing now. As just stated in the presentation, but I'll repeat it because I emphasize some other things. The planned park will contain a wide variety of elements. These include a large mowed lawn, a fenced dog run, a paved path connecting Thomas and Tazewell Street, a paved plaza, a shaded area between two large oak trees that will have plantings, new trees, and plantings that will support pollinators. However, no single element will predominate, and this is important. The three names that you've just heard today and that DPR proposed in an online questionnaire that it's distributed to the public yesterday are Tazewell Pollinator Park, Thomas Meadow Park, and Buckingham Garden Park. However, the first two names focus on elements that cover only a small percentage of the park's total area, and further contain the names of streets on which the park has only small frontages. Although they do front on the park really is only a very tiny, small piece of that. If any of the three is, the third contains the word garden, which the park will not have. That's Buckingham Garden Park. There's no garden there. But it comes probably, I think the name comes from Buckingham Garden Apartments, but it's irrelevant to the park. If any of the three is selected, the result will be comparable to the name of the nearby Mosaic Park, which does not contain a mosaic. We have to watch out for these naming processes. Another approach is therefore needed. The park will be located in the Buckingham neighborhood. That neighborhood will have only one other park, Henry Wright Park. I therefore recommend that the DPR add the name Buckingham Park to the list of potential names. I also recommend that your commission propose additional names. All should replace the 3 names that you have just heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne.
Thank you.
Now the matters with the commission.
Anybody have any questions?
Oh,
Yes.
I actually do. So I like the idea of the pollinator or garden meadow, like eco-friendly theme. But I have a question for the parents in the room. If you heard there was a pollinator park, would you be worried it would be like lots of bees or like lots of insects? Or I just don't know if that's a concern you would have or not.
I wouldn't, but I would also be thrilled if there were actual pollinators there. This is going to be in a sea of steel and concrete and asphalt. So
And I also think that Tazewell Pollinator Park has the most likelihood of being memorable, like long-term, both as Pollinator Park, which is fun, and Tazewell is a very remarkable street in that area. There's not any South Tazewell Street, as I
Is there South Task?
anyways, it is a unique street name, and that's interesting too.
It's like Ballston Wetlands Park, where we think of the wetlands, like really sticks in our mind because Ballston, you hear that everywhere. But yeah.
I could follow up with, are we just asking questions first, or do you want
Sure.
comments as
Please
well?
go ahead.
I would also just like to say, I would love to also, since we are the first to consider this naming item and it continues down a process of talking to other folks commissions wise, I would like to put in Buckingham Park into consideration. I think Dr. Byrne has a great point, and that's another reason, just as the same way as Tazewell, that it is remarkable to have that park name. Will the community want that? I don't know, because it is not technically in the community of Buckingham. However, let's consider it because I agree, it would make it remarkable.
In terms of having the name Buckingham Park, you would not include the word garden in that name.
Let's consider both options. Let's consider any sort of secondary qualifier word, either from this list or any other word they would like to use to represent the ecology of the park after Buckingham.
Okay.
Is that too much, Marco? Sorry? Okay, cool.
Does anyone know the background of where the name Tazewell came from, and also Thomas? Are these in reference to individuals?
I would love for
Yeah.
HLRB to tell us. Yeah, do you know? Oh, you look it up. Yeah, you look it up.
The 26th governor of Virginia, he was also the representative of big district here. But Littleton Tazewell was a historical figure from Virginia. He served in the United States Senate from 1824 to 1832, and in the Virginia House of Delegates several times between 1816 or between 1798 and 1816. So, and that's basically, I find it interesting. I was looking in here about the naming of that street. It doesn't reference it. Somebody needs to update Wikipedia to fix that. But so that's where the name comes from.
And the Thomas?
Thomas Cathcart was one of the main owners of the area that the park is in. You may have heard of Cathcart Springs.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne, yeah.
Okay. I have the reason I asked about that is there are times when we just sort of automatically name something after an individual just because that individual's name's been imprinted on a neighborhood or something like that. But there are times when you can get burned by that. If it turns out that a particular individual maybe has a background that you were not aware of, and it's like, okay, wow, now that I know about this background, we should not be honoring that person by naming anything after him or her. So, Shreddy, you had.
And in this particular case, Gary, I believe you may be correct in asking that question. In fact, it is essential. From my peep over the shoulder of the Wikipedia page, I don't like the image of the guy. And I'm sorry. So I propose, I'm being ridiculous, but I would like for HLRB to help us on this matter, because if none of those names are appropriate to honor, they represent people. we must think of a new name.
Mr. Tazwell was a plantation owner and slave
Yeah,
owner.
he's not for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Slave owners.
Immediately.
Never mind. Hate you.
Yeah,
That's why I just said Buckingham Park and leave it. It is in the Buckingham neighborhood. I should know I'm the president of the Civic Association. So it's in the Buckingham neighborhood.
Seriously.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I mean, you have to open this up to everything. What is Buckingham named after?
Correct.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
yeah, I don't know.
Correct. And we must. And we must. I love HLRB's recommendation. Yeah. Because I do believe HLRB is well represented and has brought wonderful recommendations continuously, both in providing us names that represent people and vetting these in the past. So their expertise is really going to be valued in this one.
Makes sense to me.
Potentially combining Buckingham and Pollinator, because I do agree with the fact that I think having that name within the full name promotes more interaction within the park, and it's a smaller space and potentially surrounded by buildings. So bringing people in and making sure that they have something to educate themselves while they're, you know, in this public place. I think that's a great idea, but definitely researching Buckingham and potentially combining the two could be a potential solution.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
This park, I was part of the process when we were making this park, and I know this is totally not, this is a totally different process, but this park is going to, I used to live in this neighborhood too, like Dr. Byrne, so I also represent Buckingham in this, but it's really going to change people's commutes, honestly. Most of the people in that neighborhood walk to Boston Metro or connect to buses around in the area, including myself. And so being able to walk through that Harris Teeter lot and have this park as your casual thoroughfare is so important. So I do think it'll become something like meet you in Pollinator Park, which is kind of fun.
I actually like that name, Pollinator Park, not throwing somebody else's name in there. Just, hey, it's Pollinator Park.
Add it. You can do that.
I do understand Dr. Burt's concern about it's not entirely like a full swath of like pollinator plants,
Yeah.
but I think it's not very reasonable to have that if we want to make it an interactive park, because you shouldn't step the plants.
Inspirational.
Yeah.
Make more of an effort to actually turn it into a park.
And respect the park.
Yeah.
Treat it with.
And, you know, when we're creating the park, another thing I just want to add is we put a huge emphasis on the fact that there's plans to be fruiting trees in that park. And one of my concerns was like overpicking for some reason, or like destroying the trees in ways like that. But by naming it after the pollinators, potentially we're advocating for safe distances from the pollination stuff.
Okay. Yeah, these are all great ideas. Okay. Well, Marco, what are the options?
So at this point, if there are names that have been discussed, you know, the applicant and staff will definitely take a look at those and then provide any sort of guidance or more information to the HLRB, the RNAC. Those are the other two that would be considering this before coming back to the PRC.
Okay. Very good.
Oh, sorry. Can we define HLRB for our new commissioners?
Historical Affairs Landmark Review Board.
Yeah, their input as well. Good. Okay. And so those other bodies will be various names
that are being
out for
considered.
Consideration. Great.
Thank you to the applicant for sharing the ideas we came up with. If it's helpful to you guys, we may be able to like write them down in a list. Otherwise, if you know them from our conversation, it would be great to share.
Yeah, I got Buckingham Park and Pollinator Park as the main two.
Yep.
And maybe a request to remove Tazwell.
Or perhaps a suggestion for when you go to HLRB, if it's possible for staff even to share somehow that we would like them to review this. Yeah, I guess, right?
Yes.
Is that possible?
I mean, it'll be up to the HLRB to see what they
Yeah.
would want to do.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Okay, well, thank you to the presenters on that. Appreciate their time.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All righty, that takes care of that one for the time being, but we'll be coming back to it. So the next one is a project update on the Gateway Park Master Plan and Design Guidelines.
And we're joined by Max Ewart.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to pull up my presentation real quick. Are folks able to see that?
Coming up soon, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And there's no delay in my voice or anything?
No.
No.
Okay, perfect.
Voice is loud and
Appreciated the confirmation. All right. So, again, my name's Max Ewart. I am I'm an associate planner with the Department of Parks and Recreation and am the project manager for the Park Master Planning portion of this project. I'm joined today with Jeremy Smith, who's also available in case any questions come up, who's the landscape architect and has been tag teaming this project with me for the past long time now. So I'm sure many of you know I've been in contact with Gary about the Gateway Park project, but we have recently finished the first engagement and have moved on to starting the second engagement for the Gateway Park project, which will eventually culminate in a park master plan that we take to the county board later this year. So I'm going to give you a quick kind of background or a quick update on the first engagement and jump into some of the conceptual designs that our partners field operations have worked on. So with that, looking first at the first engagement, total participants that we got were around 700, and that is across in-person events, including the open house, 4 pop-up events, and the online feedback form. 290 plus ish were in person at the Roslyn Bid Solar Eclipse event, the community open house, HB Woodlawn student lunch period, and then a couple other pop-up events at different bid sponsored programs that were happening at the park. And then using all of that information that we gathered from the first engagement, and a full summary of that can be found on the Gateway Park project page. Our design partners field operations have put together 3 conceptual designs: the Potomac Stitch, the Roslyn Ramble, and the Gateway Commons. This is just a summary page. I'm going to go through each in a little bit more detail, but on this page, I do want to kind of highlight a couple of distinctions between the 3, and they're mostly focused on the kind of bisecting road, North Fort Myer Drive. And each of these concepts, we have a different iteration of how the public would interact with the park, considering the North Fort Myer Drive bisects it. In the first, the Potomac Stitch, the pedestrian bridge that crosses over North Fort Myer Drive is completely removed. This is something that's consistent in the realized Roslyn sector plan, and we wanted to make sure that because the long range plan does highlight this, that we had at least one concept that reflected that. However, also during that first engagement, a lot of what we heard from the people we spoke to was that one of the biggest barriers to the success at Gateway Park is that it feels really unsafe to get to as a pedestrian. And when over 2/3 of the people who attend the park in the different feedback that we've gotten get to the park by feet, we want to make sure that folks are having the best and most safe pedestrian experience that they possibly can. So with that in mind, even though it is against the wishes of the long range plan, we have included 2 concepts that do have a bridge that crosses over North Fort Myer Drive. The first is the Roslyn Ramble, which repurposes a big portion of the existing bridge, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit more detail. And then the second is the Gateway Commons, which completely removes the superstructure and creates a whole new bridge that crosses over the North Fort Myer Drive. So with that, let's jump into each of the concepts. The first is the Potomac Stitch, and the Potomac Stitch is named because obviously we have the Potomac River to the north and to the east, and then Roslyn to the south. And so this park kind of is not only the gateway for the people that are coming in from Georgetown to Virginia, but also is kind of a gateway geologically from the natural environment to the built environment. And that is kind of part of the inspiration with this concept. Like I said earlier, there is no overhead connection over North Fort Myer Drive. And the primary design element is this Potomac Ledge, which mirrors a lot of the rocky features that's found along the Potomac River and is recreated on this northern side of Gateway Park. And here we have an overhead image that shows the different amenities on the park, including the Potomac Ledge, fitness pavilions on the western side, a couple different multi-use courts here in the middle, a dog run, both for small dogs and large dogs, an event grove, moving over to this eastern side, maintaining the flexible lawn area, and then an event pavilion or more formalized kind of stage all the way on the east. You'll notice in each of the concepts that we do have a space for public restroom, as that's something that's been highlighted throughout the engagement. Looking at the circulation for the park, this is much more direct than the other concepts. You have primary connections from the east and west, and then more minor connections to the north and south. During the engagement, we found that the primary way that people are kind of walking through Gateway Park is from this North Nath Street, both on the north and south corners for the block, and moving either eastbound towards the Mount Vernon Trail or kind of southeastbound towards Roslyn. Here's a view today of what the existing conditions of the bridge looks like. And here is a conceptual kind of image of what it would look like without a bridge in this concept. Some more kind of perspective drawings. This is from the dog run area looking west towards the multi-use courts and fitness pavilions. And active recreation is a big theme of the Potomac Stitch presentation, and we have multiple instances of that throughout the park. And then here's an overhead of a rendering of the multi-use courts from the southwestern corner of the park. Moving on to the second concept is the Roslyn Ramble, which is this is the concept that maintains the existing overhead connection, or at least a portion of it. That part outlined in red here would maintain, and then an additional construction would make this rambling, winding path throughout the park space, where the Potomac Stitch had very kind of boxy and linear rooms, of which there's different kind of amenities. The Roslyn Ramble has more organic shapes that kind of dictate these rooms. In this concept, we are leaving room for a potential maintaining of the existing pedestrian bridge that crosses over westbound Langston Boulevard. And so we just wanted to make sure that's highlighted here. Looking at this concept, we have the Woodland Walk, which is, again, kind of winding path that loops in and out of the different amenity spaces through a heavily tree canopied area. We have forest bathing rooms, which are kind of just like places to sit and be amongst nature. We have a woodland themed playground, a dog bowl, which the bowl is named for both the shape and the elevation change around the park, or around this portion of the park. We would maintain the existing Fort Myer crossing, or the crossing over North Fort Myer Drive. And then where now we have a sheer wall, where this portion of the concrete superstructure exists. In this proposal, we kind of ease that transition from the top portion of the park to the bottom with a big hill that would act as an additional viewing area for a potential stage on the far east side with a lawn in the middle. In this concept, we also would have large stormwater gardens to make sure that as much of the stormwater runoff is managed as possible. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the primary circulation through the park would focus on how people are using it currently from this North Nash Street side and then moving west. Whereas in the Potomac Stitch, it was a little bit more direct. This would have a little bit more of a winding pathway to get to where folks want to go. Again, the existing conditions of the bridge and as proposed through for the Roslyn Ramble. Some additional renderings. This is the canopy walk from the northeast portion of the park. That would kind of be a walkway on stilts through the canopies of that would be planted. From the opposite end of the park, from the west, this rendering overlooks the woodland playground. And then lastly, a similar view, but this time from overhead, where you can see both portions of the woodland playground here, and then the dog bowl in the top of the screen. Lastly, we have the Gateway Commons. The Gateway Commons is the concept that is probably most direct, and having this where the Potomac Stitch had no crossing over North Fort Myer Drive and the Roslyn Ramble reused the existing pedestrian bridge, the Gateway Commons would remove the superstructure entirely and create a new kind of iconic pedestrian bridge that could be used for the park. The amenities in this concept include the Gateway Connector, which is just a name we're using as a placeholder for the bridge, the new bridge that would cross over. We would have pollinator gardens lining the pathway, meadow terraces, which would act as almost like a second lawn area on this western side of the park. A play area, two distinct play areas, one focused on younger kids, 2 to 5 years old, and then another focused on older kids, 5 to 12 years old. A smaller dog run on this western side. And then moving over to the eastern side, we have, again, public restrooms, the commons green area, and then a large pavilion stage that could be used for performances and different events that go on in the park. In this concept, we also include a space for like a food truck balcony, which could be kind of complement events that happen at the park, and then also be a seating area when the food trucks are not there. Again, based off of how people are kind of already using the park, this would have a very direct pathway from the western side to the east and to the south. Here's that existing condition again, and then the new Gateway Connector looking from the north. This rendering is from the Meadow Terraces, looking across North Fort Myer Drive, and uses that kind of natural elevation to almost make it look like the road disappears, where now one of the big concerns that we've heard and field operations have gone out and tested is the role that the noise plays in the park. And what we've found is that this big concrete superstructure plays a little bit of a role in mitigating some of that. Using elevation and trees and other planting materials is a way that we can kind of replace that noise mitigating action that the concrete superstructure plays now and what the future park could look like. Here's a rendering looking at the pavilion and the food truck balcony. And then again, from the Meadow Terraces overhead, looking down and across the North Fort Myer Drive towards the pavilion. And with that, here's just kind of a summary slides, including the renderings for the different concepts. And again, the different amenities are listed here. As far as next steps, we are doing pop-up engagements. For this second engagement, we've already done one at the farmers market at Central Plaza. Last Wednesday, we had a chance to talk with over 52 individuals about what they would like to see in the future Gateway Park, and also talk about the online engagement that is currently active through July 19th. And I have a link to that in this presentation. Marco, I think the version I sent to you didn't have the link, so I'm happy to resend this to you so folks have that. And I'm also happy to just drop the link in the chat if that's easy as well.
Thank you.
Okay. And that second online engagement is active through the end of this week, July 19th. So if none of you, I know that Gary and Andriana have been hard at work providing updates to the commission for what's going on with Gateway Park. I think it would still be really helpful if all of you as individuals took the community engagement survey as well, just so that we have a really good understanding of what would make folks want to come to Gateway Park. Whether you live in the area, work in the area, or just visit occasionally, it's still helpful for us to know. The third and final engagement will occur in September, before moving on to the rest of the project, which is, like I said, the third engagement is in September, end of summer, early fall of 2024. And then we are targeting county board action in December. So we will be back at some point after the third engagement with a more finalized version of the park master plan and design guidelines that we would really appreciate the PRC lending their comments and support for that. After that, we would move on into design and then construction in 25 and 26 respectively. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have about this project. It's been exciting to kind of go through, and would really appreciate any feedback.
Okay. Before I open it up to questions, I want to compliment you on what I think is an absolutely outstanding job of soliciting and receiving public engagement. You guys have really done one of the best jobs I've ever seen, really pulling in the community and trying to encourage them to weigh in and feed you ideas, talk about what their hopes are and expectations, and things of that sort. So I first off wanted to compliment you for all the efforts you've already made to
Thank you.
Public input. So,
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? I know I have a few, but
You start.
no, I'll let you guys start for it.
Actually, online if Adam has it.
Great.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the summary slides? I know that's the question, but can we go back to the summary slides?
Yeah, happy to share any slide that folks want to take a look at.
Adriana, do you want to start then? Because you guys have been working on this. I'd love to give you guys the opportunity first. Comments if you have any. Okay. I mean, I'm happy to open it up. Okay. Please.
Nice. So, gosh, let's see. Have you have your three different options? Did the public input that you've already gathered provide you an assessment of what the sort of the numbers were voting for each of these options?
Yeah, so one of the questions that we asked in the engagement is which one you prefer. And I do want to kind of like hedge that with, while it is helpful for us to know like what the preferred concept is, what we will eventually be doing is taking some amalgamation of these three concepts and forming it into one that really highlights as close to a consensus favorite amenities that are in each of these different concepts. There are elements of it that folks will like. There are elements that folks won't like in each of the concepts. And so we're trying to do our best to see what the community prioritizes and have that be the final concept that we end up bringing forward in that third engagement. As far as I don't want to, we are seeing a clear favorite so far in the engagement. So in the responses we have heard back, but I'm going to hold off until the 19th because I don't want to frame anyone else's kind of responses to the questions that they may have. I want them to go in as objectively as possible, if that is fine with you.
Sure. I'm happy to leave it at that. I certainly have one that I probably would have voted for because it appears to have the highest percentage of biophilia in it. And it has an incredibly intriguing design, but all of these options do have a fair amount of biophilia in them. And so that I find to be a good thing. I have some questions about the Gateway Commons approach, which emphasizes open space for large group events,
Mhm.
if you will. Is the park currently used to host large gatherings of people?
Yeah, so I'd say right now that the primary driver of attendees to the park are the special events that happen there. The Roslyn Bid is one of the primary organizers, though there are some others that do organize events there, whether they are one-off for the year, like the Roslyn Jazz Festival, or they are like kind of like weekly or bi-weekly like boot camp workout events that happen at the park. It seems to be the primary driver, and that was part of the focus of this concept is that okay, we see what Gateway Park is doing well right now. It is a home for special events, and let's develop a concept that kind of highlights that and really embellishes that thing that it is successful in and tries to bring it to the next level. And so that was kind of the thought process when developing this concept.
Would each of the three different options allow for the same size of groups to gather there that have gathered in the past? Or are there some of these options which would actually provide less space for large gatherings than is currently?
Mhm. Yeah. So as far as the capacity to, I don't have the exact numbers on me right now, but I do know that all of the concepts have additional capacity to what there is now. And I believe, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's in kind of reverse order of capacity. Gateway Commons would have the highest, Roslyn Ramble the second highest, and Potomac Stitch the third.
That's right. Yeah. So Potomac Stitch would be able to hold slightly more than is held today, and they all kind of go up for there. But the Gateway Commons holds the most, and then Rods and Ramble second most.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And those who are looking for a dog park space indicated a preference among these three options?
They have, in my conversations with some of the folks who are interested in maintaining the space for dogs, they have indicated that. So we have the numbers on which ones of these concepts, like the square footage, for each of these. As far as dog spaces go, what exists today is around, I think, just under 11,000 square feet of space for the dogs. In the Potomac Stitch, it is slightly higher. The two combined spaces would be slightly higher than what exists today. The Roslyn Ramble, I think, is somewhere around like 7,500, give or take a few hundred square feet, in the dog bowl area. And then the Gateway Commons is around 4,600 square feet. So kind of the inverse, where Gateway Commons has a little bit more space for people, people-focused events. The Potomac Stitch, and this is largely because it is able to remove the entire superstructure and not have to create a new bridge, is able to use a little bit more of that space for amenities, including maintaining and exceeding over the existing square footage for the dog run areas.
Okay, thank you. Do any of these options include natural surface walkways?
We haven't gotten into the level of kind of detail to the point where we're talking about materials at this point. I think there are some like obvious examples where those 100% aren't natural surfaces, such as like the canopy walk in the Roslyn Ramble and the stuff around the anything surrounding the bridges in either the Roslyn Ramble or the Gateway Commons. But at this point, we haven't gotten to the point where we're talking about materials, though I'd imagine that a good amount of these designs could leave space for that in the future. But that would, we would kind of get to that level of detail as we get closer to the park master plan and design guidelines, and then even further into that level of detail during the design development process.
Right, okay, fair enough. And this might fall into the same category, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the thoughts on stormwater capture.
Yeah.
I could maybe
So yes.
take
Yeah,
that
Jeremy,
next
you might
if
be
want.
able to answer that better.
Yeah, so all of these options are going to have to deal with stormwater management somehow. The part of the issue is the whole thing is above I-66, right? Big tunnel going under. That has its own drainage sort of that's already associated with it. So some of that will just be dealt with in infiltration. But it looks like in all of the options, we'd be removing a lot of impervious area. If you go out there now, there's a lot of concrete out at Gateway Park. Taking that out just makes it better. We would still have to deal with, just because we are doing any sort of work, you end up having to do some sort of stormwater management per, code. So it's sort of highlighted in the Potomac stitch option, but I think all of them would end up needing some sort of bioretention or infiltration, that would come further along in the design as we figure out exactly what our impervious requirements are. So
I was sitting in on another park review, and one of the participants there was talking about capturing stormwater and not simply absorbing all of it that's possible, but actually capturing it to then create water features in the park out of it. In other words, capturing a pool of water that can be then recirculated and a mini waterfall created and things of that sort. So I don't know if we have enough space here really to create something like that. We may be at too small scale here. But anyway, they were tossing around some pretty intriguing ideas with all the stormwater that could be captured. Of course, I'd love to have that problem right now, today. In any time that the rains want to start again, that would be great. Our park certainly could use a little stormwater right now. So.
The other thing just to bring up, so you all have sort of some background, is the question about water features and fountains on Gateway Park in particular. There were 2 fountains there today. They kept running for maybe a decade and then started to break, and then were under constant maintenance. And what we found, it was particularly challenging to keep the water features operational because of all the because the highway underneath and the vibrations from the trucks and things just really rattled all these pipes and pumps and things that need to get working, and waterproofing systems and things like that. So VDOT, who actually just has given us a use permit, has strongly suggested that we don't put any more water features on top of their highway. And I think all of our maintenance folks have really encouraged us to, we don't want to go down the same road and design a nice water feature and then in 5 years have it break and be a sand pit again. So that's why none of these options have water features at this point.
Yeah, and that sounds like a very wise approach. Yeah. I know those of us have gone to parks who have broken fountains and this, that, and the next. It really ruins the experience. Walking through the park, when you come across things that are just broken down and not operating. So it sounds like it's best to avoid going down that path here. So I have one more question that I hope others will finally want to jump in, and that is, where do things stand in terms of county approval budget for you guys?
Yeah, so I'm sure most of you are all aware that a big portion of this budget that would allow us to build the entire park in one phase rather than a phased approach as was initially envisioned for this project is contingent on the funding coming from the CoStar deal, which is CoStar is making their headquarters in the I always forget the name of the building, but it's where the observation deck view of Washington is
Central Place.
located. Central Place. Thank you, Marco. And that decision is going to the county board on Monday in less than a week. And at the most recent planning commission, they voted to not recommend that the county board move forward with that. However, it would make the process of constructing this project significantly easier if those funds are secured. If they ended up not being secured, it would mean that we would have to return to a phased approach for this project. We wouldn't have the funding secured to do both sides of the project. The planning wouldn't be directly impacted, though having some clarity on whether or not those funds would exist or not would mean that we would be a little bit more intentional about how the phasing would occur rather than not having to phase it at all. So I don't know if the PRC is planning on weighing in on this at all, but yeah, it would for the purposes of this project, it would make it significantly easier to finish construction in a timely manner if those funds are secured, and we will have better clarity on that come Monday.
Okay, yeah, you anticipated the reason why I brought this up. It's exactly for that reason, the possibility of receiving funds from CoStar. So and I think this commission will be weighing in on that. So to the extent that you could assist us, be able to weigh in an informed way, provide us as clear a picture as one is able to in the situation in terms of where you would be stuck if that CoStar funding did not come through.
Yeah. So if the funding ended up not coming through, we would probably revert to we haven't had formal conversations about everything just yet, but we'd probably revert to our initial plan of a phased approach, which would mean the planning would essentially stay the same, though we would have to take into consideration how the phasing would occur. And then we would go through the design development process with that phasing in mind, and focusing primarily on the eastern portion of the park. So the eastern portion of the park would be constructed under this current timeline. And then if we were to revert to the previous CIP before the CoStar deal was announced, I think that would be in about like 9 years. We would then start construction of the second phase after that. So it would leave the western portion of the project incomplete for almost a decade. And then I would imagine, though I can't tell with certainty because we aren't at that design development phase yet, but I think it would probably have a pretty significant impact on the decisions we make with the bridge, because the bridge is inextricably connecting both sides of the project. And so when you have to have a phased project, the element of the project that connects those two, that has to be deeply considered as well. I don't know if we have a full grasp on what the implication of the bridge would be if the CoStar deal didn't go through, but it would have a significant impact for sure. Okay,
thank you. That's very helpful. Okay. Well, I've run out of time for questions for the others, so I'm kidding. So please, if others, Andriana, if you have anything that you wanted to follow up on, Shruti or Alex, anyone?
I don't have a question so much as a comment for us, and that is, I like features of all three of the options that you all have put together, and they all look excellent. I see this site, and I think that all the discussions that we've had as a commission and as a community about how do we deal with the desire that an awful lot of people have for courts for pickleball, where do we put them? and we know that we don't like them in a lot of residential places. A lot of people don't like them in residential places. This seems like a natural fit for that, at least the western portion of it in the Potomac Stitch option, because they're already busy streets. It's going to cloak the sound of the noise. It's accessible public transport. There's lots of parking around. This seems like almost a perfect fit for that on the western portion.
Love the suggestion, endorse. I,
I don't know if, let them respond.
Oh,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wasn't sure if you wanted to comment on that, but yeah, this is something we're considering. We have it outlined as multi-use courts, but a lot of our courts in the county are multi-use at this point, just because there are a lot of interesting paddle sports that are coming to existence, and being able to remain some level of flexibility on what's popular at the time is really important. We don't want to go around building dedicated courts for a sport that falls out of popularity in 5 years. So maintaining that level of flexibility through some multi-use courts is definitely something that we're keeping an eye on. And kind of to speak a little bit more kind of philosophically about the park is, on one end we have the Gateway Commons, where we're really highlighting the special events that exist at the park. And I think on the other end of the spectrum, we have the Potomac Stitch, which is looking more at like, okay, the events are going to be there. How can we like activate this so that we are getting daily users at the park? And that's kind of like the spectrum that we're really looking at right now, and trying to balance. And the third, or the final concept that combines all of these will land somewhere on that spectrum, and probably taking the comments like these into account when we think of that, for sure.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah, it's probably a little too hard to even guesstimate as to how many courts you could put into, for example, the Potomac Stitch, but how many pickleball courts would be potentially looking at?
So
I think
here,
we
I'll
did
bring up.
Yeah, if you bring that up, Max, I think we did look at it, and 3 definitely fit there. Potentially more.
Yeah.
The other thing I did want to bring up, so courts were something that was called for in the Realize Roslyn plan for the western side. And it was something we asked about a lot in the initial, the first engagement. And actually, courts were one of the lowest desired things that we had, with a lot of, they were up there, they tracked, but they were fairly low compared to a lot of the other elements that we, asked people what they want. So we still do have them, and we asked about them again in this phase 2. But yeah, I think in that option there, those 3 courts you see on the left side are actually sized as pickleball courts. So that's about, you could possibly get more, you could possibly get less, but that's the rough size.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for letting us know what the public interest so far has been in courts there. Trudy? Yeah.
I think one thing we could talk about that hasn't brought up yet, I've submitted some comments that we were all hinting at, things like that. But to me, one feature that's really important is that connector path. I don't prefer the Roslyn Ramble version of it. I would prefer the third option. I can't remember its fun name. Thank you.
Gateway Commons.
Gateway Commons. I prefer that connection between the 2 parks. As a visitor of the park right now, I do enjoy being able to, again, use it as like a thoroughfare to walk through that area without having to walk on the street. And so that's nice. I also want to say, like, one of the bigger features to me was the dog park. So I appreciate that was prioritized in all 3. And I think that continues to be a feature that I think is quite important for this region and its needs for open space. And that's the nature of Roslyn, right? Yeah, I mean, I love Max's ideas. I think they're all great, and I don't have any complaints at all. The way that the space is used, I think, in the Potomac Stitch is most maximizing to me, but there are elements of Gateway Commons that are must-haves, like the connector between the two.
What about the connector in particular?
Yeah.
It's attractive.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that the ability to be able to walk through the space continuously without having to be interrupted by the street is an inherently essential biophilic feature to maintain that sense of nature in the middle of the city. And I recognize it's just at street level walking across that street, but if you've walked across that street, it's no joke. It's like, my dog doesn't love it, you know, and like that's not really great if that's my main potty spot, you know, and that's something I'm thinking about as a user as opposed to someone who's driving on the road. And perhaps what I'm advocating for is prioritizing the park user over the view from the road. Because I think that that's the main complaint about the pedestrian bridge, is that it's going to be a bit of an eyesore. There's
Very
nothing pretty
helpful to
there.
hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think I think the complaint is that it currently is an eyesore.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the current one is an eyesore. I also don't like the wall at all. And so while I appreciate that maximizes the space again in ways in creating more room and experience for the concert goers or whatever movie watchers, I do think it's not fun and it's pretty intimidating to walk up to it.
It makes it feel like a fortress.
Yeah.
Instead of opening, walk on.
So I appreciate the ability to maximize the space with a lot of these features that are existing, or in the Potomac Stitch situation, just like removing all infrastructure. I think the infrastructure is necessary. We should try and make it as little of an eyesore and as maximizing as possible, but I think the connection is important.
Okay, Adriana?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. You saying, I can't remember her name. There was at the open house, there was a woman there who helped with getting some feature of the park. Like she's pretty like essential in one of the park's development originally, and she was saying how, you know, currently with how the cement is, like how the bridge is, it really encourages people to litter because you can't see. It's like a barrier, so it's kind of like if they throw it, no one's gonna see anything, you know. So she often would cross and pick up trash along the way. So she was a huge advocate for the third option. Well, the Gateway Commons, like the new lightweight bridge, because it's transparent, and it would heavily discourage people to throw their trash on the bridge. It also, I think, when people see cement, maybe it just associates with dirty sometimes. So that's a big thing. But I also was wondering, you know, even at the open house, like I know I have three really, like, we have a big age gap, like 3 younger brothers. So whenever I think, you know, I helped raise them, and whenever I chose a park or anything, I was always thinking about what they could do, not, you know, so yeah, kind of like a family focused viewpoint. And I know that only one of the, I think the Rosslyn Ramble is the only one that has like a woodland playground, but none of, there's nothing like that on the others. So when I look at like these park options in general, it's great for just me because it's all activities like I would be interested in everything, but I don't really see it. I mean, unless you just take children to a field, right? Which is still, they can kick a soccer ball or something, but like there doesn't really seem much of like the aspect of this being a family park. It seems more like it's more for like young adults or just like adults that are looking to have like event. It doesn't really seem like there's like much of a family aspect. So I was just curious if that's not really a focus at all. Because I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, so we are trying to find that balance, looking at the kind of like existing population and then potential future population. Right now, it is mostly singles and couples that are living in the immediate surrounding area, though those could turn into families with some young children in the future. The play areas are definitely highlighted in the Roslyn Ramble, but there are also 2 play areas that are highlighted in the Gateway Commons as well. It's just, unfortunately, we don't really have any renderings of those, so it's hard to kind of like really get it. This is Meadow Terrace, which is looking like off to the left would be where the children's play area is. This is on the other side of the park. And then, so the children's play area in here would be like these 2 areas. But those aren't, like I said, these are conceptual designs, mostly thinking of them as like bubbles on a map. The field operations is a very talented design team, and they're able to kind of bring them to life a little bit through these renderings. But I'd say in order of like young children accessible playgrounds, Gateway Commons and Roslyn Ramble have those two options, or the two concepts that have those options.
I think we'll take who else has questions they want to ask? You do? Okay. Oh, wait, sorry, Sharita.
No.
More. And out of respect for our incredibly patient other presenters who are waiting their turn, I think we'll end it there. This is an absolutely fascinating project, and I would love to talk about it the rest of the evening, but I think we'll need to.
You should also make comments, for sure.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to just specify, as Max and Jeremy mentioned, there is still opportunity for the public to comment on this on the online feedback. Of course, there's going to be a third engagement opportunity in September, and then the PRC will be seeing this item again at some point as well.
Okay. Dan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just really quick, I wanted to ask about the size differences in terms of width for the primary walk and the secondary walk. Mainly on the Roslyn Ramble, just because that primary walk is such a prominent design feature. Would it sort of be like a two-way path for both of those, or what would be the size difference for those, if any?
Hold on, let me pull up just to make sure we're on the same page of what you're talking about. So you're saying for the Roslyn Ramble specifically, like the primary path versus secondary path?
Looking at the rendering, it looks like the primary walk is definitely wider. Secondary walk, so I was just curious, or is it too early on in the design stage to really say?
I think we've talked about this. Nothing set in stone. I think what we've said is that the primary walks are all around 20 feet. Jeremy, am I making that up?
That sounds a little too wide to me. Probably.
Okay, I'm probably making that up then.
12 to 15 or so would be
okay.
More than wide enough. Yeah.
Yeah, there are standards that we would have for stuff like this. But yeah, we're a little bit too we're like at 10,000 feet above. When we get about 5,000, we'll have a clearer picture about that.
Okay, well, great. Well, these are great options you've put in front of us, all three of them. Appreciate all the thought that's gone into them. And I, again, very commend you for the great job you've done in soliciting public engagement. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you all.
All right. Y'all have a good one.
Karen. All right. Next up is Deer Management Project update and discussion.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Everyone can hear and see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, here I'm going to pull up a presentation. While I do that, I want to say how excited I am to hear how much discussion of pollinators there was at tonight's meeting. My team is ready to bring those to the parks when they're completed.
Well, before you begin your presentation, I want to give you guys a shout out for that just absolutely outstanding job you did at that most recent public meeting.
Thank you.
Plan.
Okay, I apologize in advance in that some of the content of this presentation will.
Website information is fantastic. The video is just superb, but that meeting could not have been handled more deftly. You were incredibly respectful of everyone who asked questions. You answered every single one of the must have been 1,000 questions that were sent your way, and you did a great job of consolidating them and again responding to them very, very respectfully. And so I think you did just an outstanding job of making sure the public has a really clear understanding of what's going on and why the county is proceeding the way it is. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for those kind words.
Thank you.
And with that, so we'll dive into the presentation. Unfortunately, it does mirror some of what you would have seen at the presentation if you were in attendance at the community meeting. But hopefully it will provide some context for those who are new to the topic. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
So again, good evening, everyone. My name is John Marlin. I'm Deputy Division Chief in Arlington County's Parks and Natural Resources Division. I oversee multiple units in the Parks and Natural Resource Division, including the Natural Resource Unit, which is conducting the Deer Management Project. And I'm joined tonight by Alonzo Abugadas, our Natural Resource Unit Manager, who's also going to be here available to answer any questions you might have. And so this presentation, it's intended to be a brief overview and status update on the Deer Management Project, which is the county's effort to understand and potentially manage its deer population to minimize its ecological impact to county-owned natural land parks. And like I was saying earlier, because much of the project's background information has been covered in public engagement and is available online, we'll reserve most of our time for detailing the county's new recommendations for deer monitoring and management, the next steps for public engagement, and estimated timelines for proposed management activities. So for some background, why is the county studying its deer population? And first, we always start by acknowledging that deer belong in Arlington County. They're native to Virginia, and they're an important member of our forest ecosystems. The concern with deer is that they are large and voracious plant eaters, able to eat 5 to 7 pounds of twigs and leaves per day, which translates to 2,000 pounds or 1 ton of vegetation per deer per year. This means that if you have too many deer in a forest, they're literally able to eat the plants in that forest faster than those plants are able to regrow. And over time, they can degrade and even destroy forests as old trees die off and there are no young trees growing up to replace them. And this loss affects not only the plants in the forest, but all the animals, the birds, insects, and other critters that rely on those plants for food and shelter. Which brings us to our project objective. Arlington County's Parks and Natural Resources Division has multiple full-time wildlife experts, natural resource managers, and environmental educators on staff across multiple units. We are tasked with sustaining the health of our forests for all native plants, animals, and park visitors. Therefore, it is incumbent on us to monitor and potentially manage deer populations when they grow out of balance with their environment. And the Deer Management Project is our effort to meet that obligation. So we'll move on to a brief overview of the project scope. The project was broken into 3 phases starting in 2022, and we are currently in phase 3. So phase 1 consisted of data collection, analysis, and narrowing down management options to consider. Phase 2 consisted of publishing a report of those findings and then engagement and education around that report to inform the public and seek their feedback on potential management options. The third and final phase 3 began on June 18th, when county staff delivered their draft deer management and monitoring recommendations to the county board and are now seeking public feedback through engagement. And another aspect of the project scope is that the project restricted its focus to county-owned natural land parks. Natural land parks are where our natural resources team has jurisdiction, subject matter expertise, and also where our highest value forest systems are located. We'll now briefly cover the history of deer monitoring and management in Arlington County. So to understand a deer population and its impacts on forest health, you need to collect 3 key pieces of data. How many deer do you have? Where are they? And how are they impacting the native plants in your forests? And to answer the first 2 questions, we hired a consultant to fly a drone over Arlington County and count the number of deer within county limits. They documented 290 deer county-wide, or 13 deer per square mile. But the key takeaway from that survey is that the deer were not evenly distributed throughout the county, but were highly concentrated in our forests at levels beyond what those forests can sustain. That finding prompted us to enlist another consultant to collect the 3rd key piece of data, which is how are deer impacting critical native plant communities in our forests. To answer this question, our consultant enlisted experts to conduct herbivory impact assessments in 12 ecologically significant parks in Arlington to determine if our elevated deer populations were harming plant communities and therefore forest health. In 12 out of the 12 parks surveyed, his team observed substantial damage to native plants from deer overpopulation. The consultant also conducted a review of the scientific literature and benchmarked neighboring jurisdictions to further inform our assessment. Their final report can be found on our project website. Now let's dive a bit deeper into Arlington's deer population. This aerial image helps illustrate the key takeaway from our 2021 drone survey that counted the deer population and mapped its locations. In this image, the circles are locations where deer were found, and the numbers indicate the number of deer in each location. Here you can see that the deer are not spread evenly throughout residential and commercial districts in Arlington, but are highly concentrated in our forest parks. The area in the center here is Glen Carlin Park, and the drone survey documented approximately 53 deer in this park in 2021, which represents a population density of 339 deer per square mile, or 17 times the recommended level for forest sustainability and regeneration. And this slide speaks to the crux of the issue with deer overpopulation, so I'd like to spend a few moments here. On the left, we have Lacey Woods Park, which is relatively untouched by deer. You can see that Lacey Woods has a dense and diverse understory with lots of different plants at different heights. This understory is key because it provides food and shelter to many animals and supports its own web of life. It also represents the future canopy of the forest, as some plants within the understory are young trees prepared to take over when older trees die. And on the right, we have Barcroft Park, which is heavily browsed by deer. Here, you can see that the understory is severely degraded, meaning that those understory plants and the animals that rely on them are absent. There are also far fewer young trees poised to take over for mature trees when they die and require replacement. Eventually, this process may result in the loss of our forests. Our community will lose access to the documented health and well-being benefits of experiencing nearby forests, and also lose the documented climate change, heat island, and flood mitigation benefits that our forests provide to Arlington County. And this slide helps illustrate the cascade of loss that occurs when plants in a forest are damaged and unable to regenerate. First, as the plants begin to disappear, you lose the animals that rely on those plants directly for food and shelter. Directly impacted will be insects, including pollinators. Then, birds that rely on those insects and plants for food and shelter will be impacted, along with other small animals such as flying squirrels, bats, rabbits, and frogs. As the plant-eating insects, birds, and mammals begin to disappear, so do the predators that rely on those animals for food. This includes foxes, hawks, lizards, and owls. And finally, deer, which rely on forest plants for food as well, are also impacted. As the forest degrades and fails to regenerate, deer will be forced to migrate, seeking food on other properties or experiencing malnutrition and starvation. So during phase 1, our consultant evaluated several management options that could mitigate these impacts and selected 5 as most appropriate for Arlington to consider based on our park characteristics, management objectives, and regulatory contexts. Some methods, like trapping and relocating deer, were ruled out because they are forbidden by state regulators. Others, like chemical birth control for deer, were ruled out because superior methods of fertility control were available in the form of surgical sterilization. These 5 methods were presented to the public for feedback during engagement so that public input could inform decision-making on which options might be most appropriate for our community. And detailed descriptions of all methods considered are available on our project webpage. And for context, this is a map of adjacent jurisdictions where deer management programs are in place on public land, mostly employing public archery hunting or professional sharpshooting. And as a side note, we've gotten a wealth of good information from these regional programs. The big takeaway being that deer management, particularly professional sharpshooting, does work, and that if done at a proper scale, you can reduce deer populations and see forest regeneration. And the Deer Management Project had a record-breaking first engagement last summer with 2,524 feedback form responses and 6,028 comments, of which we read every single one. We also did a community forum, deep dive conversations with key stakeholders, and bilingual pop-ups throughout the county. A full report of that engagement is available on the project website. Overall, the engagement showed that most respondents are supportive of a deer management implementation strategy, with 55% in support. However, the sentiments on which strategies to employ were mixed, with surgical sterilization garnering the highest support at 63%, followed by professional sharpshooting at 43%, and archery and fencing in tire parks trailing at 34% and 21% respectively. And again, these are from last summer's engagement number 1. Our current engagement number 2 started on June 18th and is ongoing through July 19th. We'll now discuss the county's draft recommendations for deer management and monitoring. And to arrive at our recommendations, the project team considered several criteria with a focus on meeting the project's core objective of sustaining and improving the health and ecological function of our publicly owned forest parks. Of primary importance were public safety, evidence-based efficacy, and cost-effectiveness. Based on the criteria we just shared, our project team recommends professional sharpshooting to reduce the deer population on county-owned natural land parks. Professional sharpshooting is a lethal technique employing professional sharpshooters using firearms to reduce the deer population. Sharpshooting more quickly and cost-effectively reduces deer populations relative to surgical sterilization and has been shown in peer-reviewed literature as well as operations regionally, such as those on National Park Service properties, to reduce deer populations sufficiently to support forest regeneration. It is also the primary recommendation of our consultant, White Buffalo Incorporated. Professional sharpshooters would operate at night while parks are closed, shooting downward from tree stands at short range. They use sound suppressors on their rifles to mitigate noise and use special non-lead-based ammunition that breaks apart easily when it contacts vegetation. As for safety, sharpshooting operations have been carried out nationwide for decades with 0 reported injuries to bystanders. Because its effect on deer is considered instantaneous and painless, professional sharpshooting is considered a valid method of euthanasia by the American Veterinary Medical Association. And professional sharpshooting would entail 2 stages of management: an initial, larger population reduction, followed by smaller annual interventions, depending on the impact of prior efforts. And professional sharpshooting would require approval from the State Department of Wildlife Resources, as well as changes to county code, and meat from sharpshooting would be donated. And the amount of population reduction will always depend on the best available data and will be adjusted dynamically with changing conditions year over year. And while the county has not generated a formal management plan, many have asked how many deer would be culled as part of deer management. So to give an idea of scale, based on our 2021 drone survey, which documented the number and locations of deer within our parks, a ballpark estimate for an initial reduction in key parks might be around 100 to 125 deer to bring the population in line with the 15 to 20 deer per square mile population densities suggested in the scientific literature and in use by the National Park Service. And this number will likely be refined if we implement this draft recommendation and generate a formal management plan, and would incorporate any new data as the program progresses. And continuing with our recommendations, to allow for data-driven adaptive management, we recommend monitoring the deer population with periodic drone surveys and monitoring deer impacts on forest health with 2 different established methods of herbivory impact assessment. These monitoring methods are also the primary monitoring recommendation of our consultant. We also recommend that the county review ACPD, AWLA, and VDOT deer vehicle collision data and intake collection methods. If we have a better information about how many deer vehicle collisions there are and where they occur, we can target public safety measures like signage, speed limit reductions, and wildlife crossings. And finally, we recommend monitoring tick-borne diseases such as Lyme disease and exploring options for monitoring other relevant diseases. And while the contractor did identify surgical sterilization and public archery as options to be considered if professional sharpshooting was not selected, or to supplement professional sharpshooting, the project team chose not to include them in our primary recommendations. Surgical sterilization has a higher cost and delayed impact compared to professional sharpshooting and lacks peer-reviewed evidence that it can reduce deer populations sufficiently to meet the project's core objective of supporting forest regeneration. And public archery hunting was deemed impractical for Arlington's densely developed, active parks during the daylight hours in which hunters are permitted to operate. And now I'd like to walk you through what the potential implementation timeline of a deer management plan might look like. And the red box indicates our position on the timeline. We are currently in Engagement 2, which ends July 19th. And Engagement 2 includes an online feedback form soliciting input on the deer management project recommendations, along with a virtual community meeting, which was held on July 11th, and commission briefings. And depending on the outcome of the engagement, this upcoming winter 2024-25, staff would develop a formal deer management plan and lay the groundwork for continual deer monitoring beginning fall 2025 and population management in winter 2026. And so with that, thanks again for your questions tonight, and we look forward to providing any answers.
Okay, I will not start it off because of the need not to hog all the question time. So if anyone has any questions or comments.
I mean, we wrote an amazing letter on this subject, guys, and it's clear that the staff recommendations are great. This is another one of a good public engagement to me. So thank you very much for the presentation on this. I think the due diligence has been done. The Northern Virginia region map / Maryland as well. I really think that's impactful, that like we have to do this because we're neighbors to folks that are doing this, and that's essential. I think we all have a story of too many deer too. We've been talking about this subject. So I think this is the opportunity to ask any questions if you wanted to like get anything else solved, but I also attended the great open house on it, so.
I have a question. I was curious if there was any data on deer car impacts, like VDOT had any reports on that compared to other counties? If we have more or less, I'm assuming more because of what we do, like, or not do with deer.
Yeah, so we do have some data from the Virginia Department of Transportation. I think, I'm just saying this offhand, I think it was something like 19 collisions over from like 2018 to 2021, which doesn't sound like too many in the context of the region. And that might be due to, we just have lower speed roads here in Arlington County. So we may not be managing deer, but our deer aren't crossing like the same kind of like dark country roads that a deer in Fairfax might be navigating on a night-to-night basis. But that is an undercount. So there is research showing that those sorts of data usually are undercounts. And also we have to consider that when VDOT is collecting those statistics, they're only counting deer that are reported to a police officer and meet a certain threshold of like dollar damage to the vehicle and or injury to a person. And so there's a lot of smaller collisions that aren't being reported to VDOT and aren't being captured in that statistic of, again, approximately 19 over that period of years.
Thank you.
Any other?
I have a question. This is Adam online.
Yeah, please.
All right. There seems to be a heavy emphasis on getting the population down quickly, and that makes sense to me. What I'm wondering is, long term, if you get the population down to what you want, it's going to probably grow back pretty quickly. And I'm glad you're including monitoring. If that happens, will we have to go through this process again in order to figure out how we're going to do it the next time? Or would there be a process put in place so that if it does happen, that the same method or we wouldn't have to go through a whole big process again to determine how to call the population back? And then part of that kind of a sub question is, does the sterilization method have any long-term benefits compared to the sharpshooting method?
Okay, it's multiple parts to that question. First, as far as how long will this program would be going on, or would we have to go and reevaluate this method should the deer population rebound? I think it's really important to understand that deer population management is going to be a perpetual feature of natural resource management, or would be if we go forward with this draft, would be a perpetual component of natural resource management in Arlington County. As long as you have deer, and we always want to have deer in Arlington County, again, they belong here, they're native here, you will have to at least be monitoring their population. And then anytime their population creeps back up over an acceptable threshold, out of balance with its environment, you would again have to intervene to reduce that population. So we would expect going forward, again, there would be an initial larger reduction, and then that would bring the population down to an acceptable level in balance with its environment. And then going forward, we would be continually monitoring and doing intermittent interventions, maybe annually, maybe every few years, depending on how the population is responding, to again keep that population at that lower level. But we do believe its natural tendency, like most deer populations in Arlington, would be to continuously grow if not managed. But throughout that period, we would be able to continue using professional sharpshooting as our primary method, unless the project team chooses or decides based on ongoing monitoring and data that it's really just not working. Like, we want this to be adaptive management. We're pretty sure sharpshooting will work because it has worked so successfully in so many similar parts of our region over so many years. But if for some reason Arlington is not the right place for it, we would be able to adapt and potentially pivot to a different method. But this draft recommendation is for maintaining sharpshooting sort of over the life of deer management in Arlington County, unless the data tells us otherwise. And as far as any benefit to surgical sterilization versus sharpshooting in terms of long-term impact, both methods would involve continually monitoring and continually having to intervene, because you're always going to have reproductive members of the population circulating and able to, again, increase that population over time. As far as impacts over time, it's really more about the benefit of sharpshooting. which is that you get that instantaneous reduction in the population. So you take the deer off the landscape and they're no longer doing that harm. Whereas with surgical sterilization, you sterilize the deer, but then you release it right back onto the landscape where it continues eating 5 to 7 pounds of twigs and leaves per day and causing that continued harm to the forest. So you really want a method that can quickly reduce the population so that the forests can begin to heal and regenerate as soon as possible.
If I could add one more point, and that is, in order to achieve those levels, studies have shown you need 90% of the does to be treated. And so, there is migration, there is all of this. You need to keep track of those which have been, which have been operated on, and keep it always above the 90% level, or it will not work, regardless.
Great. Thank you so much for your answers.
To your knowledge, have any other programs that use the surgical sterilization approach ever come close to the 90% number?
I know that the only place which is currently trying to do that is within fenced-in areas. So there is, I believe, one location in Maryland which is in a fenced-in area, which controls, of course, that you don't get new deer coming in and out of it. And that's the only place where that I'm aware of that's actively being used. And they're using that as kind of a pilot to see, what the results are from that.
Right. And of course, that would be infeasible here because we're not about to fence in all our parkland. So
yeah, well, then I think another key point there is the core objective we're seeking is forest health and regeneration. So what's really important is have other municipalities implemented surgical sterilization and then seen forest health and regeneration. And that's where we couldn't find any peer-reviewed studies or case studies documenting that to be the case. Whereas with sharpshooting, it has been documented that using sharpshooting as a method, you can bring that population again back in balance with its environment and meet that more core objective of forest health and regeneration.
I've also heard anecdotally that using the surgical sterilization approach often, not infrequently, results in the death of the deer anyway because of the trauma of the capture stage of that process.
So that wasn't flagged to our project team. Alonzo, I don't know if you have more information on that, but again, that wouldn't be the primary reason that we wouldn't choose that method.
Yeah. I believe that what you're talking about is something we'll call capture myopathy. And in when they do capture deer for a variety of different reasons, if they take all the proper protocols in order to do it, you still end up losing about 5% of the population, even if you followed all the protocols to make it as safe and humane as possible when you do capture these deer.
Yeah, but I believe that percentage goes up significantly if you capture the deer and then relocate it to a new environment which it's not used to, which is again why that method is very much frowned upon. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, I just wanted to mention that a volunteer park steward at one of the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority parks, and I had a conversation with the park manager, and I was informed that Nova Parks intends to follow Arlington County's example, whatever that example might be in terms of having a deer management program. So I know that was sort of up in the air, but that's what I've been advised, that if Arlington County decides to go forward with this deer management plan, that they intend to follow suit.
Okay, so that differs from our conversations with Nova Parks. So we have briefed them on our project, and our understanding is that they don't have a budget to carry out operations on their parks, but we could consider collaborating with them with Arlington County staging operations within Nova Park land. But that hasn't been, there's not been a firm discussion of that. This is project is still very much in its early stages.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and what I was being told is not who is going to do the deer culling, but more that they were going to be bidding deer culling on a Nova Park property.
I think that's something that we are open to considering, but this project, as formulated, focuses on county-owned natural land parks.
I understand. Thank you. All right. Any other questions, either from our remotely participating commissioners or anyone here in the room? Okay, and I'll just mention that as Shruti alluded to, we will be sending a letter from this commission to the board members in support of the deer management program. So thank you all again for your time and the great job that you have done in educating the public on the impact of the overabundance of deer in our parkland. Those of us who spend thousands of hours doing habitat restoration work in our parks as volunteers have seen firsthand what that devastation has been. And we know well that something has got to be done and done soon. So thank you again very much for leading us through this.
All right. Thank you all so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we will move on to what I hope is our last presentation. At least we hope we're not keeping people even later than I feared. So, so if I could have you guys take the floor, as it were.
Is this the mic?
Oh, anything we'll pick up. So you should be fine.
I'll sit next to you. Our advisory group member over here.
My apologies for you guys having to camp out here for as long as you
Oh,
have.
I might have to go to sleep after this. Ty, do you want to kick us off? Sure. Good evening. Thank you for having us here. We're happy to be here. It's our first time presenting to the Parks and Recreation Commission. We do have members that have been part of this project since we started in 2019. And we've received great feedback. Currently, we have 2 members of PRC on our advisory group. And so we thank you both, Alex and Greg, for participating and providing feedback. And Gary. And Gary, okay. Yes. Gary and Alex. Colt Gregory was the former. Anyway. Yes, okay. The project has been around for a while, so it's almost 9:00. Good morning, which is helpful. And so I am Ty, I'm the project manager. I'm in the Department of Environmental Services. And Lily Whitesell, and I'm helping out with outreach and engagement on this project. And Kristen is online, and she's also in DES and has experience in stream projects, so she might jump in for any questions. So this is the project site that's shown on the map there. It's a pretty large area. There are 3 reaches. So reach 1 is next to Glebe Park, and then upstream of that is the best management practice. It's a system to manage stormwater that we have added as a result of feedback we've received. And then there's reach 2, which is another section of the stream. Another section is reach 3, which is near the Broyhill Park area. And then the main stem of the project, which is by the Nature Center. So the green area is showing where we will be planting post-construction. So we have significant amount of area where we'll be planting. The actual stream project is the blue area, the deep blue. And basically with stream projects, we're lifting up the base of the stream. There is infrastructure that's compromised due to heavy flow in the stream. Over time, we're in an urban environment, so there's a lot of erosion. So with stream projects, you're raising the bed of the stream, creating the infrastructure under, and sort of building nice structures, but also adding a lot of plants which help hold the structure. As far as goals, we have a nice picture that Lily just added recently to the right. So that's a sanitary sewer in the stream that is exposed. So that's what we mean. It's been encased in concrete, which is supposed to help prevent breakage, but over time there continues to be erosion. So there's that section of the sanitary pipe that's exposed. So post-construction, that will be buried. So goals, create a stable channel, repair and protect vulnerable infrastructure, reduce the amount of sediment and nutrients that's washed down the stream, and enhance habitat, which we'll do with planting, and then finally increase public safety and access to stream,
And that's through the upgrades we make, people will be able to access the stream because it won't be as deep and there could be additional programming at the Nature Center. And so this is a nice visual that we thought would be helpful to show what these projects actually do. So the image to the left is the current condition. We have the 2 sanitary pipes that are exposed, and the red arrow is pointing to a manhole structure. And there's actually a person standing there, it's a little bit lower than the manhole. So you can see how much, so that all was buried a long time ago. They put the sanitary deep in the stream and they thought they were done, but over time things have changed. All those have been exposed and there's risk of sewer overflow, sewer breakage that could happen. And so the image to the right is what things would look like post construction of the project, and that would be everything would be buried, there would be habitat, there would be rocks in the stream, kind of walk into the stream. There you have it. Yeah, and the red arrow is again the sanitary manhole, so it would no longer be completely exposed. All right. So here's an overview again of our engagement process. We are about here at the 90%, just about at the 90% mark. Again, this project was identified early on, really in our stormwater master planning process because of all of those problems that Ty was talking about. We began with pre-design engagement, and we continue to now, and we anticipate being able to go to construction in 2025. So we're almost there, and we appreciate all the input and feedback that we've received. There's been a lot of engagement along the way. I'm not going to go over everything on this slide, but we've incorporated a lot of feedback into the design. Some of the things I want to highlight are one of the things that we heard early on was folks wanting to prioritize stability, considering our increased storm intensity and in the face of climate change. And so really our main focus has been on the areas with the highest risk of inaction. So again, that's those exposed sanitary sewer pipes that have the chance of leaking and breaking. When you talk about stream health, having sanitary lines, be discharging into streams is not what we want to see. Addressing erosion before it becomes severe with sort of lighter touch or having lower impact. So we added more of, Ty showed you reach 2. We added more of that reach into the project scope in order to try to catch that area. It's actually a dry stream bed, but it's had increased erosion over time. So we did add a little bit more of that into the scope, and it's continued to erode, so it's a really good decision. We've heard a lot about wanting to control runoff upslope of the project area, as well as just upslope of eroding parts of the stream. So we've added 4 Green Street rain gardens, which is a lot for us, and also the new regenerative stormwater conveyance that Ty talked about that is going to include 6 step pools that will, with amended soil that will allow the stormwater to filter through the soil. Also, again, from the very start, we heard about trying to limit tree impacts, and we've done that to the extent that we can continue to do that. It's something that's very near and dear to our hearts as well. And of course, we'll also be replanting in all of those areas too. Another thing that we've heard is about stream monitoring. We have a stream monitoring site, and I could talk your ears off about this, so I won't. But we have a 10+ year stream monitoring site downstream of military, which of course this feeds into that area. And we also added additional benthic macroinvertebrate stream monitoring in the project reach. We've had more than a year of data from that, and we'll continue to do that going forward, even after the project as well. Happy to address any of the other things on here in questions. We mentioned the regenerative stormwater conveyance. This is what it would look like when there is rain, kind of through that area. But again, it is currently a dry channel, and it would be a dry channel when it's not raining. There's also an undersized culvert under Military Road that has seen a lot of flooding impacts. That's also happening. There are several outfalls. I am sorry, that is my phone. There are several outfalls that have big problems. Here you can see the end of the stormwater pipe has actually snapped off and fallen into a stream bed. This is downstream of Military Road. And so we'll be addressing those with either separate projects or the regenerative stormwater conveyance will be going into the project scope as well. Thank you, Todd. That's my bedtime. It really is. So the tree protection priorities, again, as I mentioned, this is something that we really work to minimize. Again, we want to think about, we may have a near-term impact. Thank you. A near-term impact, but a long-term benefit. We're already losing trees in the stream channel, and we work to minimize, and we can, like I said, we continue to work to minimize tree removal along the construction access paths. There are some locations where, for the stability of the stream and to protect those pipes, you know, we do need to really make sure that we're doing a sufficient job to ensure the long-term stability of the stream in those areas. But then in other areas, we're able to do more to work around what we have. Again, happy to go over some of the details here. Here are some of the removal as well as the replanting estimates. One of the things, we have new tree inventory data, and so we're still incorporating that into the design for our next engagement. We have we have more information on the smaller trees. And one of the things that we've done in this project is sometimes we might have to impact, you know, 2 or 3 smaller trees in order to save a larger one, right? So if you look over here, oh, that text is really small. This is the estimated live tree removals by size. We also, if we can go through a dead tree instead of an alive tree, we try to, even though snags are important, we try to, you know, affect the live trees less. So these are the smallest trees. You know, most of the removals are the smaller ones. And then as you get larger, we see less and less because we work to prioritize those. And those ones that are larger are either in really bad shape. They're not, we've also categorized them by condition, or they're in those really critical sections of the stream. And again, removals by conditions. So, you know, this is dead, critical and poor, fair and good. So again, we've really worked to minimize the good ones. Another thing that we look at is the habitat value of the species. You know, we love all trees, not just, you know, one particular type, but we do know that some are faster growing, are early successional. The reason why we have, you know, majority of our larger trees are sort of early successional is because our forest did have to regenerate after a lot of kind of clear cutting in these areas. And so, you know, trying to reestablish some of the diversity in the forest with oaks and hickories and things like that. And we'll be adding a lot of additional trees well beyond what we're required to by the replanting requirements. This is just a graphic that shows, you know, we have some areas that are shady, there's some areas that are sunny. Riparian, streamside really worked to make sure that we are getting the right species in the right places. Ty, back over to you.
Sure. So one of the feedback we got, and you know, a significant portion of this project is making sure we have the right maintenance program that we monitor frequently to ensure success of the vegetation and also the stream structures. So we are at 90% design, which means we have a lot of things done, but we have a lot of details to figure out, and the maintenance is one section that we are working on right now. So planting for success, we're making sure we're planting larger size trees, planting more densely to increase survival, and making sure we're choosing the right plants that are climate resilient. And then ensuring survival of these plants. We'll have watering, we'll have deer shelters and fencing, and then they'll all be under warranty. We will have a replacement requirement for warranty, and then supplemental planting for plants that don't make it. and then ongoing invasive management. And for all these, we have sort of a monitoring target that will establish all this planting and invasive plants as well. And then finally, stream structures. So those are the stones that are going to the stream. We'll have frequent photographs and looking at them over time to make sure they are structurally sound. There's significant storm events. And currently we're planning to include that with the overall design of the project. So that's a big portion of this, is making sure we're designing with maintenance in mind.
Yes. And again, we've had a lot of engagement over many years on this project, and we've really appreciated everybody's participation and good questions and feedback. And we're really pleased about all the things that we have been able to take into account and incorporate into the design on this, including when I mentioned that one of the things that we did was, in order to help protect trees, was kind of limit, we adjusted some of our scope to pull back on some of the areas where there would be more tree impacts. And this past winter, we actually went out and did a live stake planting projects together with our colleagues in parks. And that was a lot of fun. So if anybody's interested in getting involved in those kinds of things, or we'll be doing some native plant rescues coming up in the fall, it's a great opportunity to get some hands-on in the stream as well. Any questions?
Any comments, Alex?
Have you all heard or learned anything from this phase of the engagement, the 90% design, from the public that you're going to be integrating into the final plans?
That's a great question. So we heard some really nice comments last week. And this is our second engagement. So it's very early. We'll probably be doing our 90% engagement with the public in September. Yeah. But that is an excellent question, and I can go back to that feedback slide, but I know that you've already heard all of it. So yes, I'm not going to put you through it.
Done an excellent job. I think.
Thank you.
Integrating what you can, sticking to the project goals.
Right. Thank you. That is, yes, that is our intention. Appreciate that. Any other?
I'd just like to also thank you for taking us on that hour-and-a-half long tour until it was about as dark as it is outside right now. With needed flashlights. Thank you for answering all the questions our group had of you that evening. Going into great detail in terms of all the efforts you're making to mitigate damage to existing trees in the area. Of course, I would encourage you to continue to add to, if there is an opportunity to add to the great ideas you've already come up with in terms of capturing stormwater upstream as much as you can.
Thank you.
But you've already made great strides already in doing that. So, okay. Any questions from any of the commissioners online? Okay, hearing none in the room here. So, well, thank you. I apologize again for keeping you so late. People at home calling, wondering where you are.
No, it really doesn't.
Okay, well, thank you again very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, we're getting close to the end. We have one or two more, actually two more things to go over here quickly. So you want to take a 1 minute, 2 minute break to refresh yourself on the table back here. And Lily and Ty, if you want to please grab one or two of those.
Yeah.
Napkins as you go out. If you do have a second plate. I hadn't thought about that.
I'll put one in front of you.
They're really good.
They're all too.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so we'll take a couple minute break.
Yeah, I'm glad both of you are here today.
Restroom or separate.
Okay. I did.
Yes, we should chat.
Okay, I think we're gonna
All right. But he's a.
back to our schedule here.
Yes.
Had a chance.
I don't have.
Okay, I think before we finish our last two items, Marco has a couple of housekeeping things.
Sure.
To cover.
Thank you, Gary. So nothing new related to the staff reports other than what was sent about a week ago. Did want to remind commissioners that on August 20th, we'll have our field trip. So DPR staff will be leading us on a tour of Long Branch Nature Center at Glen Carlin Park. And we'll be starting an hour earlier than usual. So at 6 p.m., we'll be meeting at the entrance of the facility and we'll begin our tour. Typically for our August meetings for folks that are newer to the commission, we'll begin with the consideration of the meeting minutes for this month, any public comment that might be made at the meeting, and then we'll proceed to the tour. And typically the tour will take no more than an hour. So anytime before or a little bit after 7 p.m. is when we'll.
Good. All right, our last two items tonight, unless any of you have something you wanted to bring up, well, actually three of the reports. I think unless the commission member reports, unless anyone has something burning that they want to bring up on any projects that we're covering, I think we go ahead and skip over that. Okay, good. And then that brings us then to the two letters to the county board. I thought we'd take the Barcraft Apartments Master Financing and Development Plan and Use Analysis letter first. I thought Nelson did a spectacular job of drafting that letter. Quite a gifted writer, is all I can say. Wish I had those writing skills. Anyway, I would do any of you have any questions regarding that? If not, I'd like to move that we approve the letter to be issued forthwith. I have a second.
Yes.
Okay, second, and if I can see a thumbs up or thumbs down on it, I would appreciate it. Okay, thank you. So, good. We have a formed majority to approve it. Thank you. Great job. Okay, last but not least is our own letter. Unfortunately, I'm going to have one edit to it that I realized I needed to make to more accurately capture the input of the park stewards and other volunteers. So I'm going to be asking to substitute out one sentence and replace it with two others. And I'll read you the sentence that I'm going to have I'm proposing to substitute out, and then I'll read you the two sentences I'm going to recommend that we replace them with. So the sentence is in the, I guess it's essentially the last paragraph of the letter, and it reads as follows: the park stewards and numerous other park volunteers who wrote to us represent collectively many thousands of hours of volunteer experience in our parks. So I'm going to recommend substituting for that the following two sentences. Park stewards and numerous other volunteers wrote to us about the devastating impact that the overabundance of deer have had on our forest understory and the need to take action. They represent collectively many thousands of hours of volunteer experience in our parks. So I would like to, and before I move on, I'd like to thank Alex also for some very helpful edits to the original draft. So
my pleasure.
I'm going to go ahead and move to have the draft letter that was circulated modified to include the provision that I just read to you. So do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And could I have a thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, great. Very good. Passes resoundingly. And I'll ask one last time, anything else anybody wants to bring up? Okay, thank you for your patience. That was quite a marathon session. I'm sorry that I wasn't more efficient getting through all these things. We had some pretty substantive presentations. It's important. Take some time. I appreciate your patience and your diligence and sticking with it. So. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone online.
Thank you also to you online. Yes, indeed.
Bye. Have a good night.
Good, Claire?
Okay, there are quite a few brownies up there.